Morning. Welcome to the Lehigh Valley Center for Independent Living Friday Independent Living Skills Session with Lehigh County EMA and Allentown Health Bureau. Quick visual description for those who need that. First of all, my name is Catherine. I am a white female. I have black hair. I'm wearing it down. It's shoulder length, and I have a honey-colored sweater on today, and I'm coming to you from our office here in downtown Allentown area. We'd like to welcome, like I said, Lehigh County EMA and our Allentown Health Bureau, and thank them for being our guests this week and bringing us the Ready, Set, Pack program. Quick logistics for today. We are recording today's session, so that recording will be available on YouTube in the coming week. We invite you to turn on your cameras if you're comfortable. Captions are available through Zoom. So you just click on the CC Live transcript in the lower middle portion of the screen and select Show Subtitles. We do have chat open today for posting questions or comments. I will monitor that throughout, so feel free to use that, ask questions, or if you have tech issues. And if you're joining via phone or a tablet, the captions and chat features may be collapsed, so you just have to access by clicking on the icon of 3 dots in the lower right-hand side of your device. I'd like to introduce our first presenter today, Allie. She's a registered nurse and holds a BS in nursing. Allie has been a nurse for 10 years, having spent time in adult hospital and pediatric settings. So I'll turn it over to Allie.
Good morning. So like she said, my name is Allie and I'm a nurse. Most of my background has been in pediatrics, but a lot of hospital setting. Regardless, cold and flu prevention applies to all of that. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about cold and flu prevention as we enter cold and flu season, which is a little different than it used to be, as we're, on the other side of COVID, hopefully, but all of the same things still apply. So we're just going to talk a little bit about the season is usually, like October to May is flu season. Talk a little bit about prevention and the difference between cold and flu, and then a little bit of how to deal with either one of those if you do end up with them. Make sure I can go to the next slide. Did it go? Can you see the next slide?
Not yet.
Oh, man. Now?
Yes.
Okay, we got there. So first we'll just talk about the common cold. So the common cold is caused by a variety of different viruses, things like parainfluenza, rhinovirus, any kind of non-influenza virus can cause cold symptoms. Adults have an average of 2 to 3 colds per year. Usually spring is a common cold season, fall. So 2 to 3 per year. Children have a lot more than that, and they will also bring them home or to whoever they're with. So 2 to 3 colds per year. Most colds last 7 to 10 days. So that's a decent amount of sick days per person per year. They can last longer in people with like immune disorders, respiratory conditions like asthma or COPD. So it can affect, everybody's life. 7 to 10 days of cold may not be symptomatic 7 to 10 days, and you may not feel sick for all of those days, or you may feel sick for longer. Symptoms of the cold are pretty typical, what you would expect: sore throat, runny nose, coughing, sneezing, headache, body ache. They come on usually pretty gradually. It'll start with 1 symptom or 2, or maybe all at the same time, but it's a gradual progression. You could have one of those, you could have all of those. Cold symptoms are kind of all over the map, but it is a gradual progression to cold symptoms. And then flu. So flu is the influenza virus. There are multiple strains of the flu. Flu symptoms start abruptly. So it's not like a cold where you kind of have a sore throat that gets worse and worse and worse. You kind of go from not feeling sick to feeling sick with the flu. The symptoms are the same as with a cold. So the same like headache, sneezing, coughing, runny nose, things like that. But then there's also usually a fever. There's more feelings of fatigue, like more of an extreme fatigue where you actually cannot, get things done, not just I don't feel well and I'm tired. Vomiting and diarrhea can also happen with the flu, which isn't really common with colds, but vomiting and diarrhea is more common in children than it would be in adults, but it can happen to adults. Diagnosis for flu. So you can be swabbed for the flu the same way you would be for COVID. A lot of times you can kind of self-diagnose with the severity of your symptoms. If you have a fever, don't have a fever. Now with, phone visits with doctors or urgent cares, you can go and be seen by a doctor, and based on when your symptoms started, the severity of your symptoms, they can just diagnose you with a symptom review as having the flu. If they swab you now in this day and age, you'll probably get 2 swabs, one for flu and one for COVID, because the symptoms are pretty similar. You still have the fever, fatigue, a lot of the same things as with COVID. So in order to eliminate or diagnose one or the other, you have to be swabbed for both. So they're both nasal swabs. So it would be probably one in each side is what they would do. And that would eliminate or, kind of decide which one you have. Treatment is pretty much the same. There is, you can take some prescription pills for the flu that kind of make the symptoms go away a little quicker, but they have to be started right away. Same with COVID, but we're still kind of learning that a little bit too. For the most part, flu, you can't treat it with antibiotics. You can't treat a cold with antibiotics. Viruses don't respond to antibiotics that way. So it's a kind of treat the symptoms and wait it out kind of virus. Let me see. Oh. Okay. This is just a little chart that I found. CDC kind of compares the cold and flu. So like we talked about, symptom onset with cold is gradual, abrupt with flu. Fever, like we said, with cold is pretty rare. It's pretty typical with flu. Aches a little bit with cold, pretty common with flu. So a lot of people, the fever and body aches are kind of what tip people off a lot to thinking or knowing they have the flu. Chills are another thing that's not common with cold, but is pretty common with flu, and that kind of accompanies the fever. And then a lot of the symptoms that kind of cross over are coughing, stuffy nose, sore throat, headache. Sneezing is one that's common with cold, that's not common with flu, but other than that, the rest kind of cross over. So the best way to protect yourself, we'll go into kind of protecting yourself and protecting others a little bit now. The best way to protect yourself from the flu is to get vaccinated. Sorry, my phone's going on. So vaccinations for flu are available now until through the end of June, are flu vaccines. And there's 2 different kinds. There's a regular flu vaccine for anyone under the age of 65. And there's a high dose vaccine for anyone over the age of 65. That just has a little extra protection because that's a pretty vulnerable population. A flu virus is a quadrivalent vaccine. So that means it protects against 4 strains of flu. So, and it's always been like that, the flu shot. So it is pretty protective. Even if you were to get the flu, having the vaccine usually will make your symptoms much more mild than without. There's no vaccine for colds, but there are other things that you can do to protect yourself, flu and cold. Washing your hands. Always washing your hands. 20 seconds. For kids, we tell them to sing happy birthday twice. You can do the same, but 20 seconds with soap and water, and making sure that you're getting your whole hand. So that's fingernails, that's in between your fingers, that's the top of your hands, thumbs. Those are the places that people most often miss. If you don't have soap and water ready available, then you can use an alcohol-based hand sanitizer. Avoid touching your eyes, nose, and mouth, especially with unwashed hands. So in flu and cold season, no matter what, avoid touching your eyes, nose, mouth, especially with COVID too. But when your hands are, when you know you've touched something that is dirty or not yours, don't touch your face. And you want to stay away from others who are sick. So viruses are spread through close contact, contact with a surface that has a virus on it, and then touching your eyes, being in close contact with somebody who has been coughing or sneezing and inhaling those viruses. So staying away from people who you know to be sick is another good way to protect yourself. And then, let me go back. Oh no. I don't know how I lost it. Okay. Another thing you want to do is protect others. So if you unfortunately did become sick, what we want to do is protect anyone around you from also getting sick. The best thing you can do is stay home. If you are in a home with other people who are not sick, try to stay away from those people. If you can avoid sharing bathrooms, sharing cups, silverware, plates, anything that you would share like that, try to keep yourself separate. And you don't want to return to work or to anywhere that you need to go, school, anything like that, until you feel well. And if you had a fever, you should be 24 hours fever-free without using medication to reduce the fever. So fever-free is not considered fever-free if you're taking Tylenol to keep your fever away. So you want to be fever-free without fever-reducing medication. Avoid close contact, because we talked about close contact is how viruses are spread. So hugging, kissing, touching, shaking hands, any of those surfaces that have the virus on them, if you get them on your hands or anything and you touch your face, that's how you would spread viruses. We want you to cover your cough and sneeze. So this is a big one. You don't want to sneeze or cough into your hands if you can avoid it, because hands are what you touch everything with. So if you can cough or sneeze into a tissue, if you have it, throw the tissue away, wash your hands. If you don't have a tissue, you want to go like this little girl is, in your elbow or the upper part of your arm, so that you're not using your hand and then touching doorknobs and other things that people share. And if you can, move away from other people, because sneezes and coughs, they spread a lot of that airborne virus, and at a high speed and at a long distance. So you can't always see it, but it really gets that virus out there. So if you can move it away and protect others, that will help prevent the spread of virus. Again, wash your hands, always, always, always wash your hands. So you want to wash your hands after any time you cough or sneeze, before and after you eat, because if you know you have any virus on your hands and then you're eating a granola bar or something, you're just going to give yourself that virus as a snack. Anytime hands are visibly dirty, you want to wash them. And then we can also disinfect. So you want to use like a Clorox spray or wipe or any kind of disinfecting spray for high touch areas. So that's doorknobs. Any devices are actually very dirty, iPads, cell phones. I don't know the cleaning protocol for all the devices, but I think a lot of the sanitizing wipes are okay for those. Toys, handrails, anything that is high touch that you can think of touching over and over and over again, it should be disinfected. And I think that's my last slide. Okay. Does anybody have any questions? Vaccine is.
I'm not seeing any in chat right now.
Okay.
I will say though, the wash the hands, I think I say that about 20 times a day. I'm always around younger children. It's wash your hands, wash your hands, wash your hands.
And
oh, by the way, wash your hands.
People, yeah, they'll just do like a quick rinse, but you have to use soap and water, and you have to wash for 20 seconds. With kids, we used to use the like the UV stuff that you would rub on and then wash your hands and then see what was still dirty, and it was like most of the hands still.
All right. Well, yeah, like I said, not seeing any questions. Thank you so much, Allie.
Yeah.
And if anything comes up, I will reach out to you and we'll get those answers for people.
Best thing for cold and flu season is vaccines and washing your hands. Those are my two favorite.
Easy enough for all of us to do. So we are going to be hearing now from Lehigh County EMA. We have John, who is the community outreach manager. and has served in that role since the spring of 2022. In the capacity, John oversees the Lehigh County CERT Cord program and the Community Emergency Response Team, or CERT, and the Hazard Mitigation Program. John strives to build stronger working relationships with the first responder, community, nonprofit businesses, volunteers, and organizations. And joining John will also be Maryellen Shiels, or as we know her, Mel. She is the Public Health Emergency Manager at the Allentown Health Bureau. Mel just celebrated 30 years at the Allentown Health Bureau. Congratulations.
Thank you.
After learning about personal and family preparedness through her work, Mel has been a firm believer in the importance of individual and citizen preparedness. Mel has engaged her 2 Siberian Huskies, Duchess and Contessa, in family drills at home. Mel would like to thank you for taking time today to attend the Ready, Pack, Go emergency preparedness presentation. And with that, I will turn it over to our fantastic team of, and I believe Tanya is also with us today
I was
too.
gonna say, we can't forget the most important one, Tanya. So Tanya Hook is also joining us. She is the Director of Lehigh County Emergency Services, Lehigh County Emergency Management. She's here today. Really, Mel and Tanya have been integral in starting this program and getting it running. As you've heard, I've been here for, Tanya makes fun of me because I lose count. I make a new number up every time, but about 130 days. And but without Tanya's vision and foresight and Mel and the team that was already here, a lot of this stuff and information would be slower getting out with me as I learn my role. But I thank you guys all for having us here today. As you heard, there's parties from the Health Bureau, the County Emergency Management, as well as various other community aspects that really play a role in getting us prepared for community emergencies and disasters and making sure that we're all prepared. The goal of this is to make sure that you think a little bit more about what you need in the event of an emergency. So the workshop or what we'll provide today is that, being prepared, ideas of what to assemble in your emergency preparedness kit or your supply kit, information for your family, your friends, loved ones, and then information for you to stay informed through our various aspects of outreach and information gathering, websites, social media, and partners like that. So when we look at emergencies, we've got to think about what our big emergencies are. And being in Pennsylvania, we may have some of the smaller wildfires. We don't have tsunamis or anything like that. But we
John,
still
your next slide didn't advance.
No, I didn't go there yet.
Okay.
So I was gonna
Okay.
lead into floods, but we really still have, even though we don't have the stuff that makes the news every day, we still have some of these larger scale incidents, and flooding being the #1 for Pennsylvania. We still have our small scale wildfires, especially in areas of drought. Another big one for us is winter storm and tropical storms that could lead to severe thunderstorms and even tornadoes. We showed that we had some resiliency. We still can succumb to the flu or other pandemics such as coronavirus. And then we have incidents of hazardous materials, earthquakes, landslides. We do have a nuclear power plant close-ish. We have some dam failures upstate that could result in flooding down here, and then always terrorism. So again, the goal for you is to think about this on outside and what you need to do to be prepared. Preparedness starts with being informed, and we'll go over some ways that you can be informed, making a plan, assembling a kit, and getting involved with our teams. Also learning from our past. We've gone through many incidents. Tanya will highlight some of the responses that we've done before, and that will help you learn from our successes and I don't want to call them failures, but they're our learning points. So how do we get informed? There's multiple ways. At the county, we have a Code Red program. You can text Lehigh to 99411. The city of Allentown also has a Code Red program. Mel's going to highlight those in a second, but we also have ready.gov that gives great information, has packing lists and ways to get your emergency preparedness kits. American Red Cross is a great friend and venue and avenue to follow to get that information. And then recently we started and enhanced our social media presence. We have an Instagram and a Facebook account, and we really provide a lot of information on being prepared, emergency preparedness, how to build a kit, as well as some weather updates and other pertinent information. Some of the other warning systems are the emergency alerting system, our NOAA weather radio, and then, like I said, Lehigh County Code Red. Mel, I'll let you talk about Code Red since you are an excellent speaker on everything, but especially Code Red, you're elegantly can describe that. So I'll let you steal that.
Sure. So when you sign up for Code Red, the beauty of this is you're familiar that when you know of an emergency, you call 911. But what if the 911 center knows about the emergency that's going to be affecting the health and safety of your residents and where you, well, basically where you live and or work. So with Code Red, the 911 center, Lehigh County Emergency Management, has the ability to identify an emergency. And then when you sign up for the system, they will send out a message if there is some actionable steps that you need to take. So if you go to Lehigh County's website, it's ema.lehighcounty.org. When you get to that page, there is a Code Red icon on there. When you click on that icon, it will take you to the next page. John, if you could advance. Okay, so you want to sign up for an account. And the reason you want to sign up for an account is because you then have the ability, using a username and password, to be able to update your information. You have the ability to enter both residential as well as business. So the first one that I have on the screen here is you will put your contact information in. So mine is Mel and the last name is Shiels. I selected that the address is going to be residential. The address name is home, and then I would end up having to fill in the rest of the fields, which is address to be notified, the city, the state, and the zip. And the reason that's so important is because when they put a message out, they have the ability to do geocoding, or basically selecting the addresses that are impacted and just sending the message to the individuals in that particular address. You can go to the next slide. So when you enter it, you also want to put in phone numbers. So when you do that, you'll enter the phone number. You will click that you want to select for the text messages. You have to select the mobile provider. And then what type of alerts do you want to receive? Code Red can send you multiple. So the two that I had selected, because I had done screenshots of what I had done, was I wanted emergency notifications and general for the alerts, and specifically to my phone, I wanted to be notified if there was a tornado, severe thunderstorm, flash flooding, and then I would select add phone and add email, because when I create the account, or when you create the account, you can add more than one phone number and more than one email address. So you want to add anybody that resides or visits at your home on a regular basis, have them add into their email address as well as their phone number. But just you want to make sure that you notify them that you're going to do that. So when I first got started, I ended up putting my mother and my sister's phone numbers and emails into it because they're at my house frequently. So I wanted them to be able to get the alerts in the event that they're there with me, or in the event that they are there watching my two dogs, Duchess and Contessa, and I'm not. And then you have to read the data privacy and then select that you understand that. Okay, John, next slide. So this is what it looked like. I entered it. So my first name, Mel, last name, Shiels. I selected the residential, then it was home. I just took out the first couple of digits of my address, but I live in Bent Pine Hill in Fogelsville, Pennsylvania, and my zip is 18051. When I did all of that, that ended up and hitting save, that ended up then saving that into the system. So John, the next slide, please.
Get used to.
Then I work in the city, Center City, Allentown at 6th and Shoe. So I put in my work address, 245 North 6th Street, Allentown, PA 18102. I entered my work cell phone number. I selected that I wanted to receive text messages, but you can also select TDD and a TTY device to receive tone delivery for those individuals with the hearing impairment. When you select all of this and you enter your cell phones, you do have to list the service provider. So in this case, mine was Verizon Wireless. And the only alert types that I wanted to receive on my work cell was emergency notifications. I could have selected general notifications, which meant I would have received a lot more information as well. Next slide, please. Oh. Okay, John, don't know what you just did to me. So when you do all of this, it ends up, I again did a screenshot. I wanted to do a test message. So it listed my addresses. And then I ended up having, it tells me that a call has been initiated to my cell phone and the type of messages that I was going to be receiving, because the best time to do everything is before an emergency should happen. Here is a couple of examples, the type of alerts that you may receive and that I did receive. So code red weather warning. Once you sign up for code red, I have received notifications about severe thunderstorm warnings. And actually one particular day, I was here in the office. It was around 4:30 in the afternoon. And we got a message that there was a severe thunderstorm warning, and that happened at around 4:45 or 4:45. But then just as everybody was going to be leaving the office, the tornado warning came through. So I received not a text message, an email, as well as a phone call, because when you get a tornado warning, they're also going to be telling you you should go to an interior room in your home without any windows, the lowest level of the house. This was really something critical, because at this time, that's not the time you want people to be getting into their cars and getting onto the roadways, especially if a tornado were to be touching down. So this is why this system is so important. Another thing that ended up happening is when there was the car bombing in Allentown in 2018, in October of 2018, they ended up putting out a code red message to the residents that were in the affected area, because they had identified, again, through the geocoding. So they selected certain addresses near 7th and Linden Streets, or I'm sorry, 7th and Turner Streets, because they put a shelter in place order. At that point, they wanted to make sure before anybody came out that it was safe for them to be coming out, because this, again, there was a car bombing, and unfortunately 3 people had lost their lives, and they wanted to make sure that any debris, nobody was going to get injured. So how do you notify the individuals in that affected area? Code red. So they put the message out. Even though I was only a couple of blocks away, did not receive the warning or that notification, because I was not in the affected area. So just those there got a phone call and email, as well as a text message telling them, please stay inside for basically for your safety and well-being. So this is why it's really important, because there were a lot of people that also had family members and friends that stay with them or visit with them. So you want to make sure that you had them registered into your code red. You can have them listed into your account. Now, also important is that you may have family members and friends that live outside of the city of Allentown and Lehigh County. Please tell them to go and look at their county emergency management page to see, are they using code red or another emergency alerting system? But this is another tool in our toolbox, because we're familiar with getting our notifications through the radio and the television, but this one is something that's much more personalized. The last thing that I would say about code red, you can also download an app on your phone. So the app through the App Store on your iPhone, or through the Play Store if you are an Android user. The nice thing about that is when you download it, you will have to create an account again, but you can use the same username and password. But the reason that I like the app so much is because your phone tends to go with you wherever you travel. So if there is an emergency and there is a message that they want to put out, and you're in that affected area, you will get notified. And specifically, they have used it when there has been, serious incidents, such as when there have been active shooters in some communities, and they're trying to get some messages out. So that's the reason why. And it's not then going to be just for the area you live. When I travel to Florida with my mom, I have gotten code red warnings, and most times it has something to do with, a road closure or water outage or something, a boil water advisory, something similar to that. But again, that's all important information. Okay, John, next slide.
Next slide, we're going to start talking about family disaster plans. So a family disaster plan should obviously be for your friends, your family, your loved ones, but it's going to put some of what Mel said into place. And then the next few slides, we'll discuss things that you should have in your go kits that are part of that plan, including evacuation routes, meeting locations, and escape routes in your house if your house is part of the disaster. Creating an escape route with your family, making sure that that's communicated to all the family members. If you need to shut off gas, and it's not putting yourself in harm's way or not going to delay you into it, grabbing appropriate important paperwork, insurances, birth certificate, social security card, preparing for any special needs, whether it be dietary or medications or, I can't think it. I know I have more listed on a few slides, but I can't think of anything else off the top of my head. But anything that you feel that's important that you will need to get through, a day, 2 days, 3 days, the next 4, maybe a week. It could be a little bit before you return back to your home. We think about the hurricane that just went through Florida. Some of those people can't return home, and so you want to make sure that you have items that will keep you safe, healthy, and keep you going. If you have out-of-state contacts, luckily nowadays we have cell phones, and that keeps a lot of that information. We're able to keep those. We don't have the phone book, but I remember growing up, my mother had a phone book, and that was the only way I was able to call my grandmother, was looking up grandma's phone number in there. But I, still her address, so all that pertinent information, we still may write it down for safety, or just as that's how we were raised. Vital information. I know my brother's birthday, but I don't know what he's deadly allergic to. And you may have some information on family members that's written down. It's really important. Again, during that plan, you want to make sure you're going to discuss where you go. Every class that we do, if we're in person, we'll usually say, hey, if the fire alarm goes off, we're going to go out and meet at the flagpole. That's really applicable to home too. If your house is on fire or you have a flood, we want to make sure we go outside and find high ground or get away from the disaster that is part of our house or wherever we're at the time.
John, before you move on to the next slide, I just want to point out a couple of things. What's really important is that we are all so accustomed to having our information in our phones. But what if something happens and our phone batteries are no longer, our phone battery dies, or we lose the phone? So it's really critical. Catherine, what we're going to send to you is the link. Pennsylvania has a preparedness guide. It's available online. It's free that you can download, but there are pages in there because it's really important that while we're so accustomed to having access to our cell phones, we'll become lost if we're not able to access it. So this is where one of the pages in this emergency preparedness guide, you list every person's name, their phone number, their addresses, their emails, so that you have all of that information. Then we recommend that you keep it in a waterproof pouch, whether you put it in a couple of Ziploc bags so that it stays so that it does stay safe and stay healthy as well. The other part is, John just mentioned about the importance of having that family evacuation plan. Just last night, I was talking with neighbors, and my one neighbor is in first grade. They had to come up and design their emergency evacuation route from the house. And so what they told her is that if an emergency happens, you go to Mel's front porch, because everybody knows Mel's front porch. And so, but then the big thing is to practice it. And that's one of the things that I do with my dogs. Every month, I push the fire alarm. And so when that fire alarm goes off, they hear it. I grab their leashes, I take treats outside, and we practice going outside. So that's going to be the next step that my neighbors are going to be doing with their little girl. Because if you do ever have to evacuate your home and emergency responders are there, one of the first questions that they're going to ask you is everybody out? Has everybody evacuated safely? if you have not identified that predetermined location that everybody is going to report to every time, and you don't practice it, it's going to be very scary if you get out of your home and everybody is not in the location that you thought. And so when you tell the emergency responders that how many people were in the home and how many of you are here and you don't know where the others are, the emergency responders, specifically fire and police, they're going to start to develop a plan to go into the home to make sure to see if there's anybody still in there. So it's really important to have that predetermined location, share it with everybody in the family, and then practice it just like I do with my dogs. Okay, John.
All right, so now we're going to get to the point of assembling our kit. And we want to make sure that we have supplies in there that are going to be useful. And then an important thing to remember is to make sure that, well, first we're going to start with that. We're going to look for at least 3 days of supplies and water, something non-perishable food items, maybe some toiletry items. But we want to make sure we try to pack for at least 3 days. That can get us into a safe spot, whether it be we can't return to our home for a little bit or our home's a complete loss or wherever we're at. We just need to relocate. 3 days is a good rule of thumb. But you also want to make sure that when you pack this kit that you check it every 6 months. Not all of us can get non-perishable items. So sometimes if you're going to, put granola bars in there, that unfortunately they do expire. So you want to make sure that you are keeping your kit up to date. Kind of a rule of thumb that I've seen and I've heard and I like is when you change the clocks change and you change your batteries in the smoke detector, but also check your kit then too.
The other reason that's a good time to do it is because what you're going to need in your kit in terms of clothing is going to be very different in the winter than what you're going to need in the spring and summer.
Yeah, that's an excellent point.
Another good reason.
I didn't think about that, but that's an excellent point. Yeah, you're gonna, have some shorts and short sleeve shirts in the summer, but that's not gonna help you in the dead of winter.
Right, winter time, you're going to need definitely different clothing.
So, Mel brings up an excellent point there, but if we're going to go just for the basics, if I can get you to do 6 things in your kit, I'd like you to do water, if possible, non-perishable food items, but food nonetheless, and you just make sure you check it every 6 months. First aid supplies, clothing and bedding, and again, seasonal would be preferred, but maybe you put in there long sleeves all the time and worry about that later. Tools or emergency supplies, and then any special items that you need for any medical conditions or family medical problems. And then if you have pets, we will talk about pets, but Mel's got 2 dogs that she loves, and she's gonna also add something special for them, keep them safe and healthy as well.
And some of the things you want to make sure that you consider, if you wear glasses, make sure you have an extra pair of glasses. If you wear hearing aids, then hearing aid batteries. Think about any special considerations that you need that would have a major impact if you did not have access to it, that's in your kit. So I wear contact lenses. I need my glasses, so I have extra pair of glasses and contact lenses. My sister is hard of hearing, so she makes sure that she has not only hearing aid batteries, but if something should happen to her hearing aids, she also has a notepad and pen as well as a flashlight, because in the event that it's dark out and there's a power outage, she does rely on lip reading. And so if it's dark and there's no other power, then to be able to put the flashlight up to be able to read somebody's lips. So you want to think about your personal needs of what you would need, and then add that in of your into your emergency kit, into any one of them, because these are the 6 basics, whether it's your home, your car, or your workplace.
They do sell commercial 72-hour emergency supply kits, mostly with some of the supplies you see on the screen. Bottled water, again, non-perishable food items, but again, flashlights, extra batteries for the non-pertinent items that we didn't think about, like hearing aids, or I guess that's the only thing I can think of off the top of my head. But additional clothing or bedding and first aid, maybe some cash, again, your documents that are in a waterproof container, and any special need items. You want to have your emergency go bag at a spot that you can grab it, whether it be always in your car or by the front door. You want to make sure it's easily accessible, so when you have to leave your house in a hurry. A battery operated AM FM radio, again with extra batteries. An extra set of car or house keys somewhere, either with a neighbor or somewhere you can access them, just in case you can't get through the house. And then we've talked about important documents, medications that you'll need in the first 24 hours, and maybe a spot to where you can get additional medications if you need to, or a store that you can go to.
And before we move on, I just really need to stress how important this emergency go bag is. John, if you can go back to that slide for a second. In Allentown, we have had several major incidents where people have had to evacuate quickly. We've had gas explosions here in Allentown. The most recent one that ended up having about 300 people being displaced at around 11:30 at night was in February of 2011, Gross Towers and Towers East, not too far from where the Lehigh Valley Seals offices are. Is located, but the residents on that street, on 13th Street, both sides had to be evacuated. Most people evacuated with the clothes on their back. Many of them had a cell phone, not their cell phone chargers, but we were able to open up Ag Hall as an evacuation shelter. What we took notice of is that most people came just with the clothes on their back. Now, the unfortunate part is many times we're assuming we're going to be able to get back into our home very quickly, but that's not always the case. And when the emergency responders are coming, they're going to be coming to handle the emergency. So fire, police, EMS, they're not going to be handing out bottles of water and granola bar. They're going to be going in to handle the emergency. So this is why Tanya and I, after that emergency, after that gas explosion, really started to do a push how important it is that you have this bag packed for every person in your home. You have it somewhere accessible. Everything from the extra set of house keys and car keys, having cash on hand. In the end, you need to make sure you have your identification, even if it's a copy of it, because when we had the car explosion a couple of years ago in 2018, and we did have to evacuate some people and put them up in a shelter, before they were going to be allowed back over to their home, they needed to be able to provide proof that they were a resident at that particular home. So there's a lot of things that you want to be thinking about and have this all packed, because the reality is, if it's that the fire alarm goes off, you basically have 2.5 minutes from the time that you hear it to get out of your home quickly and safely. You will not have time to run around and get the radio, the bottled water, the food, the spare keys, the first aid kit, because you might get a minor injury on your way out. You just don't know the time of year. So having all of those things and thinking about what would I need, because this would be, help is going to come without a doubt, but that go kit is for your first 12 to 24 hours of what your emergency needs, of what you would essentially need. Because the other reality is sometimes people have not been able to get back into their home, and that's the reason why the insurance cards and other important documentation is so important, because you might have to start picking back up. And that unfortunately did happen with that gas explosion. There were a couple of homes that were, had to be completely taken down because of the damage. So I just really needed to stress that, as well as that medication, because if you take any medication that you cannot miss, you want to make sure that you have that in that emergency go bag. Because when we were at Agriplex and we had almost 300 people, in the middle of the night, how were we going to get, most of those people reported they needed some kind of a medication. How do you do that within just a couple of hours? So that's why I have to stress how important that is. Okay, John.
So this kit that I'm going to highlight real quick is specifically more for your car. But again, it touches a lot of stuff we already talked about: flashlights, extra batteries, a hand cranked radio. But in reference to like being stranded in your car, we've had incidents where people are stranded in their car for snow. So you want to make sure you have a shovel if you need it. Again, a first aid kit, bottle of water, foods that don't spoil are high protein, nuts and energy bars. Again, maybe a basic toolkit. If you have a pet with you, maybe something for them, or extra kitty litter. Kitty litter is also good for traction. Ice scrapers, blankets, something to keep you warm during the winter time and get stranded. And then anything that you might need for others. I have a 6-month-old at home, and we pack a lot of baby supplies, and I have baby supplies in my car at all times. So I have wipes and diapers, and that's something that you just want to think about, that you're going to have to, if you're stranded for even a few hours, that you might need. And then again, our loved animals. If it's something that we can't go back to our homes, want to make sure we have pet food and bottled water available for our pets, and enough for both pets, or however many pets you have, any medication or medical records that you might need for them. There are commercial pet first aid kits, but realistically, if you have a human first aid kit, a lot of that stuff will transfer over. An extra leash or collar and ID tags for the animals, their bowls or dishes that they eat out of, a copy of any of their medications or vaccinations so that they can get into shelters or housing issues, and then the veterinarian's contact information just in case they need to go somewhere, your microchip information just in case they run away, unfortunately, toys, treats, anything to kind of keep them calm as well.
The other thing I just want to point out is recent family photos of you and your pet and any family members, because in the unfortunate situation that you may get separated, how do you prove that that animal is part of your family? So pictures, recent pictures of you and every family member with each of those animals is going to be critical as well.
So how can we get involved, and what are some of our volunteer groups doing is next? And one way that we kind of push people to get involved is we have our Lehigh County CERT team, which is our community emergency response team. And they're really the go-between our first responders and our community. They help build community resilience and help teach our community members, life lessons, and as well as how to be safe and help somebody, help themselves, help their neighbors, help their loved ones. There's also the Allentown Medical Reserve Corps, which is made up of medical providers, but also non-medical providers who assist in medical times. Sorry, Val, I hope I didn't butcher that too much. Our Red Cross has a volunteer designation, and then our Lehigh Valley CARD, our county animal rescue team, as well as our volunteer first responders. Some of the events that our first responders have done include, and I'm going to ask Tanya to speak on this because some of these were before I was even here. So
some of the most notorious events that we've been involved or had around this region, we had a tornado come through Heidelberg Township back in 2018. We had some damages to some barns as well as crop damage and some trees and limbs down. In 2016, we had a high impact snowstorm hit in January. Up to 32 inches of snow was received over a short period of time. And you can see in this picture just how deep that snow was. It impacted the region for well over a week in some areas. The next one is Superstorm Sandy that came in October of 2012. You'll see by the pictures, we had power outages due to power lines, trees down into houses, as well as many areas were flooded. We had some shelters open during that period of time. One was set up at UGI, another one at Ag Hall, and then we combined down into DRF High School. Those shelters were open for almost up to a week in some areas. Then we had a snowstorm back in October of 2011. This snowstorm hit in the middle of the day. The interesting part about this event was many of the leaves were still on the trees. So the snow was very heavy along with all the trees. It knocked a lot of trees and wires down. The power was out in some areas for up to a week just because of the amount of damage to the power grids. So while the snow was gone, we still were dealing with a lot of the impact from the storm. Then we had Hurricane Irene back in 2011. You can see in the pictures, some of the roadways were blocked. We had a lot of detour signs set up. One of the things we always teach is turn around, don't drown. You never know how deep the water is. The picture on the bottom right-hand side is actually from the city of Allentown. We had a roadway that was flooded, Martin Luther King Boulevard Drive, and you can actually see the roof of the car just sticking out. We have people in the area that unfortunately do try to drive through the water, or just because of where they're parked, become part of the problem. Then Mel had talked about the gas explosion in 2011. She talked about the issues with gross towers And really, that's where we came up with that list of 6 items to have in your grab and go kit. As she said, many of those people walked out. It was the middle of the night, so they were basically in their pajamas. They may have grabbed a coat. Many did not. They may have had slippers on. So you can see the impact of, you know, just being out of those homes for a short period of time. But had we gone and had to keep those individuals out for longer periods of time, it would have become an even bigger issue because many of them would have needed medications. Then we had a tornado hit back in 2010 out in the New Tripoli area. The damage was mainly to roofs, and we had some trees down into cars as well. In 2008, we had a tornado come through the Deer High School area, the west end of Allentown. Fortunately, this tornado occurred on a weekend, so the class or the high school was not occupied at the time. There was $1 million worth of damage, but had the schools been in session and school been occupied, we could have seen more damage and possible injuries, as well as some fatalities. In 2007, we had some localized flooding out in the lower Macungie region. We had 25 homes that were impacted by that storm. A lot of property damage. They had some flooding issues in the basements as well as first floors. And then in 2007, we had a little storm on Valentine's Day. Just as well as a couple of years ago, we kind of experienced some of these same things. You know, the roadways were blocked due to some transportation accidents that happened out there on the highway. So we had thousands of motorists stranded out there on the highway for anywhere from, I think it was like 23, 24 hours.
It was 24, yes.
24 hours. And most of those people in those lines did not have any supplies in their vehicles to take care of them. We actually had a news station that was reporting on it. They were taking bottles of water and food out to the people that were stranded, and they became part of the problem as well. And this was just kind of an example of some of the things that we've seen here locally, but you can think back to each of those emergencies and how they may have affected you. You know, did you start putting more supplies in your supply kit? Did you start taking more you know, supplies in your vehicle? I know one of the things when we went through the tropical storm Lee and Irene, we shortly thereafter bought a generator for our home. So if we were impacted by flooding or power outages, we could take care of the necessities for our home for, you know, a short period of time.
So before we go to the questions and the answers, the only thing I really just want to stress is we know that emergencies and disasters sometimes can occur with little or no advanced warning, which was the case with the explosions. Sometimes we do get advance notice, such as when there's the hurricanes. But even despite that, regardless, you need to be ready. And the best time to prepare for an emergency is now. On a nice day like today, the sun is out, we're not expecting any major incidents. And the reason that's so important is because once those notices go out, such as like with Hurricane Irene, I'm also going to tie into with the advance notice, we are still 2.5 years into dealing with the public health emergency of COVID-19. And early on, it was very difficult to get a lot of the supplies that people needed, such as masks, hand sanitizer, the antibacterial wipes, you know, and those kinds of things. So the best time to prepare is now. When you have time, you can purchase things little by little and start assembling those different kits, because the reality is it could happen to you. The reason we showed you all those slides of what has happened is just to give you some good examples. It can happen here. It has happened here. The biggest thing that we want is that you're prepared so that you're going to be able to be more resilient or be better able to take care of yourself and get back to normal or a new normal following that emergency or that disaster. That's why it really is so critical. So with that, now I'd like to say, let's turn it over to any questions that people may have.
All right. So I'm not seeing any in chat right now, but I will say this was great because, you know, we were talking about Code Red, Mel, and it reminded me, I'm like, oh, you know what? I've been traveling to my friend's house a lot. I need to put their address into my Code Red. And so I went on real quick and just added the address. Took me like maybe 2 minutes to do.
Right.
And
the other
it's
reason
one of those
it's
things
so-
you don't think of.
And it's so important because people might change their cell phone numbers or their email addresses. And that's why you want to have an account that you're able to access. And you might have new people coming into your life that are going to be starting to come to your home, and you want them to be protected as well and not rely on just you sharing that information. So we're fortunate. And I don't know that we said it, but it's free. It's being provided by the county, you know, by the Lehigh County, by the city of Allentown. So Code Red is a free service to you, but it's really a critical service. It's another tool in the toolbox to give you that information, keeping you updated.
Definitely. And, you know, I know also I have parents that are, of course, a little bit older. They do not live close to me anymore. And so being able to know, you know, what's going on around them so I can make sure they're prepared or just be alert. Like, hey, if you guys need to come, let's get you out now before something happens. Or I definitely need to go check my kit, my emergency kit, and update it for the winter.
Well, thank you for having us. I hope this was informative. And if you need any further information on preparedness or emergency prepared kits or training, or would like to join any of those organizations that we play a role in or need help joining your local public safety agency, please reach out to myself, Tanya, or Mel. We'd love to help. And again, thank you very much for having us today.
Thank you so much. Yeah, and I will make sure I put links for all the websites that were shared in the recordings so people can access those and reach out. But yeah, thank you guys so much for coming. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Catherine, and thank all of you for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks. All right, have a fantastic rest of your Friday and a good weekend, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.